Hello, this is Tina. Welcome back. In this video, we are going to cover useCallback. Besides useCallback, we have to also need to understand another thing. Okay, we'll see later. So why use callback? In React, components can re-render frequently, especially when their state or props changes. When a function is created inside a component, a new instance of that function is created on every render. This is talking about if we have a function inside a component. Every time we render, a new instance of that function is created. And if that function is passed as a prop to a child component, the child component will receive a new function reference on each render, which can also cause unnecessary renders of the child component. Because functions are behavior, we don't need to every re-render we create a new function. We can reuse the previous version, right? So useCallback can help mitigate this by memorizing the function and the feature and returning the same instance of the function unless its dependency changes. This can improve performance by avoiding unnecessary renders of the components that rely on the function. So here we will take a look at the example which has a problem. Then we will try to solve useCallback. Okay, so now let me show you let me write from scratch. Then here we are going to have a useCallback demo. Okay, and then we are going to have the first one is called, let's call counter, our favorite. Okay, and then we have a to-do.tsx. Okay, to-dos. Let's go to-dos. Okay, I think it's an array. Let me see, it's a to-do or to-dos. Let me check. Should it be to-dos? Okay. Rename to-dos. So here, first we implement the counter, and the second we implement the to-dos. Okay, what's going to happen? In counter, we will use our favorite example, which is +1, that one. Okay, so here we will have const count set count. Okay, equals useState is equals 0. And then we are going to do is here we are going to have a first one is here we are going to have a h1, which is a counter count. Okay, display how many, and then we have a button which is +1 can we have on click. Here I just do directly put it here. Okay, set count. I will just use count +1. Okay, you are welcome to use this syntax +1. Especially you are working with asynchronous APIs with the count +1, it may not work. This one is guaranteed to work because this one is will always get a previous value, then you modify on top of it. Then this is the demo. Then what's going to happen? The next one is here in the to-dos. Here we are going to have a collection of to-dos. Here I will have a to-dos, set to-dos, and still useState. useState will get an array which you have a to-do 1, then have a to-do 2, to-do 2, and have a to-do 3. Okay, like this way. Okay, then I'm going to do is here have a add to-do. Add to-do going to do what? Add to-do gonna be sorry, my bad, is a function. The function going to set to-dos. Okay, every time when we set a to-do, we are going to set a new to-do. As we mentioned earlier, we have to do spreads here. This is because if I directly do a to-do start push, and it won't work. okay, because the set it to do or the state change, it's a by reference. When we directly modify on existing to do, the reference is not a change. Even though we call set it to do again, it won't trigger a re-render. Okay, so now in to do's we'll have a new to do. Okay, this new to do we can do is add a to do's dot length. So it's gonna be 1 2 3 plus 1. Okay, so every time I'm gonna be new to do 4, new to do 5, 6, like that way. And then the to do and the to do's, okay, to do, add to do, it's going to be rendered in to do's this component. Okay, so here I'm going to have a props type, and I'm going to define a type which is a props type, type, and which will have what? Which will have to do's. To do's is a string of an array, and the second one is going to have I'm going to call like this way. So I'm going to have a to do's. This another property, this component I'm going to call like this way, which is have a to do's. This to do's will equals to do's, which pass to do's to there, which this to do's is added here, and we'll also add to do. Add to do is equals to this function. So the property I'm going to do is use the props, this property for the props gonna be added to do, and it's a function. So what's the type of this function? The type is here. I don't have any parameters, and here return nothing. So it's going to be this part plus return type is a void. Okay, so like this way. And then now I have props. Okay, if you want to make it more advanced, you can do like this way: to do's added to do. So you do not inside this function component body, you don't need to do constructing assignment by yourself again. Okay, so you can directly construct assignment here. This is a very convenient way to do. And for here, let me make sure you guys be familiar with this syntax. This one just to make sure we have a single root for this component. And when we when we turn this thing, return of the a function to do component, and which is inserted in this part, it won't include the extra div, okay, which is directly everything under this void element. So now I'm going to do is have a UL here will render what? Render to do's. To do's I'm going to do is dot map. Map will have to do. Okay. You can also do is to do, and my bad. To do, and here have an index, and then we're going to do is li. Li will here will have to do, and here the key I'm going to use index here. Okay, it's not a good choice as a key as index. We'll talk about it later. And then here I'm going to have a button. The button is add new to do. Okay, and how to add this new to do? See here, this function is already implemented inside where in the counter. I just pass to the to do, right? So if I invoke this function add to do inside the to do's, it will cause this function body to be executed, which is add new to do inside the use state, inside the to do list, right? So we can do is here unclick on to do, add to do. Just put it here. When I click this button, it will trigger this unclick event. It will invoke this function. This function is actually is what? Add to do. Then it's gonna trigger this line. Okay. So now let me start the application, and we are going to see the behavior. cd ls cd day 3. Okay, and npm start. Oh, there's something I didn't clear, which is in the app. I have to add this thing here. So I'm going to comment previous the demo, then just here add a counter. Okay. So here I have a counter. Well, here I still have an input. Let me get rid of this too. And also get rid of this one. Not needed for now. And then go back. What this input is where? This input. Did I install it? Oh, probably I run the wrong one. Just see, let me see. There are 3 React hooks, right? No. Let me see. Okay. Did I turn on auto save? Yes. Only has a counter, right? Yes. Oh, I know why. This counter is because I have multiple counters here. It go to the use effect counter. Okay. So this counter, I'm not going to use this one. I'm going to import another one, which is from where import. When you use my demo, be careful. Okay. From use callback. Use callback, then the counter. Okay, that's the reason, because here I also have a counter. In this demo, I also have a counter. That's why it use this one. Okay, I will say callback counter. Okay, so won't be confused. Callback for counter. So later on, when you turn this one, just still no problem. Okay. Callback counter, then here. Okay, so we have a +1, okay, and we have a to do 1, to do 2, to do 3, right? So here I'm going to do is take a look at our code. I'm going to make a change here inside the counter. I'm going to have a console.log counter. Not a counter. I should do is inside the to do here. I'll just add one line of code, which is to do's component is being rendered. Okay, rendered. Now let's take a look at our inspect the console. Let me refresh. This is initial rendering. When we initial rendering, we are going to execute the to-dos. This is because here, when we in the app, when we render callback counter, then callback counter will render the to-dos, right? This is correct. No problem. Initial rendering, and then if I +1, see here. +1. This +1 is inside the counter component, but not in the to-do, right? So when I +1, your to-do component is being re-rendered. That doesn't make sense, because if I add a new to-do, it makes sense. I will be re-rendered, right? Because I'm adding a new to-dos here, yeah, it's fine. But I'm not. But if I +1 here, there's nothing to be changed in my to-do component, to-dos component. But now, if I +1, my to-do component is still being re-rendered. This is not efficient, and that's a problem we are trying to solve, because the +1, it only needed to re-render the counter. There's nothing to do with to-dos, right? To-dos component. To-dos component, there's no need to re-render. That's a problem. Okay, to solve the problem, and as we mentioned earlier, we have to use a callback. Okay, the reason of why it's re-render is because every time you pass to do, this to do is not being changed, but add to do here, it's going to, every time this add to do's is going to be generate a new function. Every time we run this counter, the add to do's gonna be regenerate, and to do's will check, oh, it's different property, I have to re-render. That's a problem, okay? And you can use a callback to solve it. And use callback, you give a function, and you can have a dependency, okay? And our callback logic is here, which is the function we actually executed inside the add to do. Then it will return a memorized callback, okay? So use callback is a hook memorized, and the callback function you want to memorize, which is whatever the set add to do we want to memorize, which is this part. This part is actual function execution code, right? Then this part is we want to memorize. Then we are going to put inside our use callback this function body. And you can have dependencies. Dependency is what? Whenever my to-do is changed, you have to generate one, okay? So let's see if it's going to be fixed. So you say, oh, use callback can fix. I'm going to do is use callback, okay? And it has a function. The first argument. The second one is a dependency. And what we want to memorize is this function, right? So this function is what we memorize. You can also do like this way. This is a function we want to memorize. Put it here. And the dependency what? Whenever my to-dos changes, you have to give me new one to-dos. Okay. This is a dependency. Then we can assign this one to replace with previous one. Okay, then I'm going to do like this way. Okay, so now our add to do is a memorized version of add to do. So when a counter re-render and our to do's is not being changed, this add to do is going to be the same one. So the properties should detect, oh, this one we didn't make change because this one we didn't make change, right? And add to do is not being changed, the function. Then it should work. Let's take a look at the code. Does it work? You will say, Tina, it's not working. Yes, it's not working. We have to step back a little bit, take a look at the default behavior inside the React. Inside the React, React going to render all children by default. Every time a parent component state or props change, React will render the parent and all of its children. This can lead to unnecessary re-render if the child component don't depend on updated state of props. But this is default behavior. So now let me give you an example. I'm going to close this one. Let me use a name called default render. Okay, demo. Then here I'm going to use a parent. I just use a parent, okay, tsx, and also have another one which is a child.tsx. Okay, for the child rfc, and this child doesn't have any dependencies in the props. Okay, and I'm going to just console.log, which is child is being rendered. Okay, kind of like everything is static. In my parent, we will go over our favorite example. I don't want to write it again. Okay, so here rfc, I'm going to have a counter, and here just to have these two. The thing I didn't do well is the import. Use state. Okay, let's do. So this is the count in parent, and then I'm going to have a child here, which is our child. And as you can see, our child is actually kind of like a static component. doesn't depend on anything, right? Don't have any properties, don't have any state, okay? Very simple one. And I have a parent will have a +1 to change the count. Now in the app, I'm going to comment this one first, then I'm going to just add a parent. Okay, so let's see here, the child being re-rendered. This is initial rendering, and when I see here, when I click +1, the child is still being re-rendered when the parent is being changed. So when I make a change into my parent, even though the child doesn't have any state, doesn't have props being changed, it still will be re-rendering. This is the default behavior inside the React. And why React do that? Because React want to make sure there's nothing being changed inside the children to make sure it's consistent, okay? And inside the React 19, it will have a more automatic memoization. We are going to talk about later. So how to fix a problem in functional component? We have to use React.memo, this function. This is a higher order component in React which helps optimize the performance of functional component by memorizing them. If the props of the components don't change between renders, React will skip re-rendering the component and reuse the last rendered output. This can solve our problem. We have one more slide for that. So memo lets skip re-rendering a component when the props are unchanged. For our example, see here, the child doesn't have any props, but it's still being re-rendered whenever we change in the parent, right? This is not good, it's not efficient. So we can use a memo to skip and re-rendering, okay? How to do is a memo as a component you will get, and you have a memo. And this is a function inside the React. You give the component you want to memorize, and if you want to compare the props equals or not, you can optionally give your function to compare in which kind of condition the props are equal. So let me using this one. The optional props equal is a function that accepts two arguments, the component's previous props and it's a new. Then you should return true if old or new props are equal, and that if the component will re-render the same output and behave within the new props as old. Otherwise, it should return false. Usually, you will not specify this function. By default, React will compare each props with object.yes. But if you want to have your own logic to compare if the props is changed or not, you can do, okay? Just have a function, and the syntax, the TypeScript definition is like, here is a previous one, here is a new one, and you return Boolean, which is a true or false, okay, Boolean. So returns, and this memo gonna be returned, memoize the component, then you export it, okay? I forgot the memo return new React component. It behaves the same as the component provided to the memo, except React will not always re-render it when the parent is being re-rendered unless its props has been changed. Okay, so here to solve the problem, what we can do is do like this way. I will export not the child. I'm going to export a memo. Okay, memo is a function provided by React. And here you will have a child. Okay, and now let's see. So I just export a memo child, and we will do the same thing. Now if I +1, this is initial rendering. Okay, now when I only make my parent change, your child is not being re-rendered because my props is not being changed, right? This is more efficient. Okay. Then we go back to solve our previous problem, okay? For app, let me turn on this one. Turn on this one, turn off this one, okay? Callback counter. As we demoed just now, even though here I use callback, it will still work. It still doesn't work. This is the same behavior as we mentioned earlier. This is because in the to-dos, even though we already make sure our other to-do is a memoized version, it still doesn't work, right? And the problem is here for this to-do, you have to be memoized, okay? Otherwise, it's still doesn't work. So here we'll export memo, and here we'll have to-dos, okay? Now let me this is initial rendering. Then when I +1, see here, our to-dos is not being rendered. But if I add a new to-do, you will see it's being re-rendered, because when I add a new to-do, I have to do what? I have to re-render to display the latest to-dos, right? See here, it works, okay. And let me go back, which is turn off this one and turn on this one. Okay, just a demo to you. This do really work. It's not because of memo. Okay, so now I'm going to do is this is being re-rendered, and now our to-dos already is memoized. Okay, and then now let's go here. Click on, see here, it's being re-rendered. This is why. This is because every time we re-render the counter, this component, it's going to generate a new, every time we run this statement, it's going to create a new function and add to do. And for the to-dos, okay, for to-dos, when in the memo, you know, we have what? We have a previous props and we have new props, right? And for this one, it's the same. But for add to do, it will only compare with the reference. And the two previous add to do and a new add to do, the reference are different because every time it's create a new one. Okay, so the memo, this one where the props changed. Oh, I have to make sure you are re-rendered. Okay, that's the reason we also need to have a memoized version. With memoized version of the callback function, only to do is changed. It's gonna be changed. Okay, so here, let's go here. So here, when I add, it didn't trigger the to-do component being changed, and only when I do like this way, it's going to be re-rendered. And make sure you have the dependency. See, if I don't have dependency, okay, let's see, add, doesn't trigger, okay, but when I add to do, see here, it's going to have problem, see here, re-render, okay. So here, make sure you add, it depends on what? Depends on the to-dos, okay. Last one I want to emphasize is this demo same, okay. Last one I want to emphasize is the React 19 is still inactive, and there's a change, which is it's going to automatically, for all the components, probably by default, it will add this memo by default for the component. In class component, it has a component called a pure component. You can also achieve the same thing as this memo. Okay, memo. So in this video, we covered actually two things. One is a memo. Why we need to use memo? Because by default, React will re-render all the children's. This is to make sure that React one check that make sure it's consistent. There's nothing being changed in React in the child component. So even though we use callback, it won't work. We still need to use a memo. Okay. The version we are using is 18. The version of React is 18, which is stable version. And for 19, when it comes, I will do a test to see if it works. Okay, that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye bye.